Dresses like a spider and looks like a bug. We should all just give him one big hug. Look out, ooh, here comes the Spider-Man. He has these tights and that tight little... Hey everybody, and welcome to Twin Talk, a video discussion show where twin brothers Chris and Kevin drink and draw while talking about comic books, movies, and all things pop culture. We are your hosts, Chris Hart,
Kevin Hart,
and tonight we're going to be talking about 2002's Spider-Man.
Stick around to the end of the episode to see how our drawing of the Green Goblin came out, and if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel for more content.
The year is 2002. We are 10 years old. This is our first sexual experience.
Pretty much. Nerdgasm.
Going to the theater to see Spider-Man back in the day. Spider-Mania was all the rage. I remember being in 3rd or 4th grade, and this kid brought in this Spider-Man movie book, and I was just so hyped to see this movie. I remember going to Walmart and seeing the toys and the picture of the Goblin when he's in Aunt May's room and having her finish the prayer. I just remember being like, "Oh my god, that looks so creepy!"
Those eyes, those yellow eyes.
I just remember seeing that in Walmart in the toy aisle as a young kid, and being like, "Oh man, that's so crazy to see it come to life." Especially since we grew up on the '90s animated series and reading the comic books as a kids, Amazing Spider-Man, and being told stories from our uncle about Spider-Man growing up.
See it
made real was so unbelievable. Yeah.
It's great. It really is a timeless,
so good,
timeless movie. Although we just recently rewatched it, and obviously we're reviewing it how many years later. The CGI doesn't hold up. Some of it
holds up.
Some of it holds up.
I was telling you the other day, this reminds me of 89's Batman. People that went to go see 89's Batman were probably like, "This is amazing. It's the best thing ever." And then, you watch 89's Batman now, and it's very of the time, too. And it's still a great movie, great film.
Timeless.
Same thing with this movie. It was 20 years now since this came out. We're rewatching it now as adults and seeing things as filmmaking.
Right.
And you realize
different perspective.
Yeah, you realize that, okay, the CGI is going to look a little shoddy here and there. But for the most part, I honestly would prefer this, because a lot of it is practical when you see him jumping and stuff, and and then they do the CGI when necessary. But for instance, Homecoming, even him just putting on the suit looks so CGI,
artificial.
Yeah, and it's I don't buy into the fact that there's a man standing there in a costume about to go fight crime. I was expecting it to feel more dated, but it doesn't, because Sam Raimi did the right thing of making it feel like a love letter to the John Romita.
Well, that's the thing.
Stan Lee comic
it's such a well-crafted live-action adaptation that touches all the bases of the comic books. Mary Jane was the way to go with this movie. It kind of felt like the time that it was filmed in, a Friends kind of soap opera. Personal drama, day-to-day drama in the city. It kind of had that vibe to it.
Well, that's how Spider-Man comic books feel. And that's when they're at their best.
With a Spider-Man on Broadway, which I think there was even a show after this that came out.
We saw it. It was great.
Yeah, Spider-Man was swinging above her head.
It was Radio City Music Hall.
It had that grounded feel to it, but also with the right amount of comic book flair to it. Let's talk about character by character. We'll start obviously with the hero. Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Crushed it. Even as a kid, I wanted to be him in the cafeteria. I wanted the pretty girl of school to slip on juice, whatever, and me to turn around, catch her lunch tray heroically, and she'd fall in love with me.
I remember hearing a rumor that Jake Gyllenhaal was going to be cast at this time as Spider-Man, which in hindsight I would have loved, because I'm a huge Jake Gyllenhaal fan. But I feel like Tobey Maguire was perfect, like you said, at the time. He crushed it. He was so relatable in the role of the boy in school that gets picked on, and he wants the girl, and he can never get her because he's not cool enough. And it was so perfectly executed.
Right.
Everybody's been that way in their youth.
The thing was the transformation. I feel like this was a big part of this movie of gaining power and what to do with it. And obviously Spider-Man, great responsibility. He became more confident as Spider-Man. I feel like it was almost like a persona, the same way that Norman Osborn had this Jekyll and Hyde persona. That was his version of transformation of him. Spider-Man was almost his own duality.
Let's talk about that transformation. Obviously, it's iconic. Even Jon Favreau, when directing the Iron Man movie, said that he wanted to make Iron Man's first flight feel reminiscent of how Peter Parker was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man when he first gets his powers. He's testing it. He does the go web go, Shazam, blah, blah, blah.
He doesn't get it right away.
Yeah, that's a great scene. That's when the audience has the most fun, because we're also going through this journey with him. But I couldn't help upon rewatch seeing how perverted his transformation was. Like, for instance, when he's at the science fair with the spiders with MJ, and then he gets to take the pictures of her. He was so pervy. He's like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, he probably could have used 1 or 2 photos for the school paper. This dude took, like, a full roll. He was just like, yep, yep, keep it coming. I'm saving this one for later. And then when he gets home, he's acting so shady. It's just, like, mad sus. Yeah. He comes in, completely ignores his elderly parents at this point, just to go upstairs and to, well, you know, do what we all do when we're in alone. Uncle Ben's like, oh, did you get any good pictures? He's like... He like slams the door, grabs the blanket. It just goes segues from him like rushing upstairs like, yeah, I can't talk right now, I gotta go up. Shirts off immediately. He's just staring at himself like, oh. And he's looking down and stuff. And he's like, oh, big change. It's a nice 3 3/4 change. To add insult to injury, Aunt May's like, what's going on in there? And he's like, oh, nothing, Aunt May. Just brushing my teeth in my bedroom. And then she shuts the door. Webbing everywhere. And he's got like this direct angle into MJ's bedroom. They're maybe 6 feet apart, maybe. And there's nothing, no drapery, nothing. You tell me that this guy has been innocent all along. This guy's been web shooting since before he got bit by the spider. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying?
What'd you think about, too, like that change of making him basically turning into like human spider? I like the web shooters. I'm a sucker for the web shooters.
I go classic every time with that. I prefer the web shooters.
One is just a crazy cool aesthetic. Yeah. Plus it showcases Peter Parker's brain.
I didn't hate the organic web shooters.
Yeah, it worked.
Especially with Sam Raimi coming from like a horror background. Maybe he was going for like a body horror vibe with that. And it never bothered me. Peter, with his newfound powers, obviously is trying to make a name for himself and get some money to get that ass. He goes into the ring. He fights Macho Man.
Bonesaw is ready.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Clearly, you could tell the regulars in the wrestling crowd that like the cage is coming down. The guy's got the bucket of popcorn. Cage! He was like, way too enthused about this dude's murder.
Popcorn, his hat's like this.
You could tell he's at the first of all, daytime wrestling.
His wife and kids are at home.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just watching a wrestling match at 3 p.m. That was a great scene though, because like, you know, like obviously when you see, oh, it's just this puny little kid and he beats his ass because he now has superpowers. Everybody in the audience is like, hell yeah, let's go.
Plus, it was again,
and it's a fun scene too. Yeah, it's directly from the origin of Peter Parker Spider-Man. And I was talking to you a little bit about it. The thing with Spider-Man that Batman doesn't have with their origin is that Bruce Wayne was 8 years old, 10 years old when his parents were killed.
Right, yeah.
He couldn't do anything to stop his parents dying. That's why he becomes the Batman and lives this lifelong mission. Peter Parker could have stopped this guy that eventually killed his uncle, but he let the power get to his head, the pride, and his ego a little bit because he was feeling himself. And that's the real tragedy of it all. And that's why, and this movie did it perfectly.
Yeah.
Like
I was getting pretty tear-eyed.
They have this little like argument in the car as he drops him off before, and he's like, stop pretending to be my parents. And you can just tell that the dude's crushed. And then that's his last words to him. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, when he's lying in the street, like...
brutal. When he's calling out Peter, I was like, oh, man. First of all, great acting, great direction. It made you want to go after that robber and to see, like, that realization. That's what I love about this movie is that a lot of it is based on power. Like, Norman gets power and he does evil things. Spider-Man, he kind of learns that this is not the route to go and he does the opposite end. That's like my favorite part of this movie is like their different transformations. Like they're perfect opponents, first of all. Let's talk about Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. The best scenes in this movie to me were, first of all, great direction, great acting of showcasing Norman Osborn's duality, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde aspect of the Green Goblin, of him, the helmet, him crawling near the fireplace, talking about like how he's
pleading with it. Yeah.
He's conflicted of like Norman's interest to Peter, you know, and his son, this and that, and then also even that scene of him like walking in the mirror, like me, your greatest creation. I was like,
newspaper.
That is one of the greatest directed and acted scenes.
How they filmed that still like blows my mind. How they filmed that. Like
I did, like as a kid, I thought it was actually like he was in the mirror and stuff, but obviously older, I realized, you know, it's just like the split personality. There is, however, a differentiation of his hair is a little bit more messed up and down. So I thought that was a nice creative choice. This movie gave the villain a reason to be evil, quote unquote. You kind of sympathize with Norman.
Feel bad for him a little bit.
You feel bad for him, yeah. Like his company's about to go belly up if he doesn't do this by this deadline.
From some like douchey like military guy.
Yeah, you feel this pressure. Although he's not completely innocent, we have to remember that Norman Osborn, he's got these family dramas with Harry and his divorce, and you're talking about brushing women off and do what they need to. But also he's kind of got that ego of like that mad scientist of like, oh, we need to do this right now. I'm not taking no for an answer. I'm not taking failure for an answer. And I really like that aspect of Norman, of this like almost like uncontrollable ambition that leads to his demise, unfortunately.
And I think that scene where he's like in the lab with Dr. Strom becoming the Goblin at this point is such a horror vibe to that scene. And some of it still scares me to this day, like how they edit it so quick with like the loud noises and stuff. Or even when the Goblin's like, whoa! At the end of the movie, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
I remember being like, Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
But that scene where he transforms is awesome, when you see the muscles expanding on the computer and the Goblin serum going in and the gas coming in, and you just know that he's about to become the Green Goblin.
The side effects of the Pfizer
vaccine. It's like sad, but the Pfizer. It's like almost like sad, but like badass at the same time too, because like we know he's about to become the Green Goblin, and you're like, let's go, get this movie off the rails, let's go. With this drawing, I decided to go with the unused Sam Raimi concept art from Stan Winston Studios for the Goblin, because there was something so unsettling and creepy about it when they released it years later. It was more comic accurate. But I'm glad that they went with what they did in the movie, because it just seems more practical.
It gets a lot of hate. But
yeah, a lot of people don't like it. They're like, oh, it's a Power Ranger suit. I think it's
costume.
badass. Yeah. I think it's the most realistic take on the character that they could have done for that time. But I chose to draw the unused concept art because it's so unsettling, it's comic accurate, and it reminds me a lot of Tim Burton's Nicolas Cage's Superman Lives movie that never made it, with a lot of like wacky costumes and concepts. So I really wanted to draw that piece because it's so unique to me.
You wanted to go the indie route. I see.
Yeah.
The underground route.
Yeah, it's just the punk rock Goblin costume. Yeah. But it's like the face like emotes and stuff. If you watch the behind the scenes, like it was like remote controlled, where he could be like, he could like move his eyes and his mouth and like teeth and stuff.
It's cool.
Very creepy, but for what they did in the movie with the Goblin costume,
it was more grounded.
It's more grounded, and it makes more sense with what they were doing with the military thing.
Even his eyes open up, like the goggles open up. You could see his mouth moving behind the mesh
creepy,
screen.
Yeah.
And to me, it's still a great costume. It doesn't deserve all the hate that it gets.
Not at all.
Obviously, the comic accurate is like flawless. I need the tote bag. I need that Gucci, Armani, bag full of like actual pumpkin bombs.
But you know what happens? Everybody complained about this suit. You know what you got? New Goblin. So look what you did.
Exactly.
We got a snowboarder. Congratulations.
We were going over our favorite scene of the movie. For me, it's got to be the climax of the movie, because this is the same Peter Parker, Tobey Maguire, the kid that was chasing after the bus, couldn't even get seated next to the jelly donut kid, is saving the city. I'm a sucker for battle-damaged suits, superheroes.
Yeah.
This Spider-Man goes through it. He's taking punches left and right. From like the Goblin, that's the one scene that I'll admit that is like ridiculous in the movie, when the Goblin's like just does not look right.
In the climax? In the building? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like the Protector of New York Spider-Man gets hit. He's like, boom, and he lands like, oh! yeah. It's like, this guy is supposed to protect New York, and that's the noise that just came out of that man.
The stakes were so high, personally, for Spider-Man, between Aunt May, MJ, everything was working for me, but it's got to also be that Times Square scene. That's got to be one of the most iconic scenes for me. Like the minute we're like, oh, like Harry's asking, he's like, oh, have you seen my father? Blah, blah. He's like, I don't think he's coming today.
And then you hear the 808 kick, and you just see the Goblin glider come from behind Times Square. I remember being in the theater. I was like scared as a kid. I was like, oh no, this is not going to end well. You hear that freaking like glider coming in.
His laugh.
So badass. It really is so badass. And then even all the balloons, like the way Spider-Man's fighting on the balloons, and the way they fight there is so sick. I love that the Goblin like incinerates the people.
Bombs,
he like incinerates the people that like screwed him over, basically in the corporate side of things. And then he sees Spider-Man, and it's almost like a challenge to him, like another costume freak, and they go at it, and it's a cool fight. Honestly, I like the practicality of it. It does kind of look a little bit like Power Rangers to me. I'm not gonna lie, but I would rather see two people like actually duking it out than a CGI fight any day. I really don't like Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane.
She has a great scream though. That's
great scream. But like for me, like MJ is such like a cool badass in the comics. In these films, like the Raimi films, she's kind of just like the damsel in distress, and it just annoys me a little bit. But nothing is more iconic than that scene in the rain, the upside down kiss. That is an iconic image right there. I remember just like rooting for him so much when he kissed her. As a kid, I was just like, yeah, bro, get it.
Yeah. I see London, I see France, I see Kirsten Dunst's nipple. Harry Osborn, James Franco is probably only his best role in his entire career, where he's actually serious as a committed actor to a role. But he is the worst friend, the worst boyfriend, the worst son, the worst student. You were talking throughout that entire woman's.
I love when the teacher grabs him and stuff.
The teacher who's younger than every student in that scene.
Yeah. I love that. The teacher in this movie is probably like 35, 38. Tobey Maguire's like 28. Yeah. And it's like, this is not a high school student.
Yeah, exactly.
But you buy into it because it's Hollywood and filmmaking, and you have no choice but to sit there and watch it.
This review would not be complete without talking about J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. JJJ. Perfection.
Yeah, he's literally like the embodiment, physical,
ripped from the comic book,
physical embodiment of this character.
The haircut, the mustache, cigars, the wisecracking in the office, everything. But if anything, he's the greatest hero of this film because he was protecting Peter Parker's identity when the Goblin came in. He was just about to fire him 2 seconds ago, and he's like, I don't know. He takes his pictures of the mail. He sends his pictures of the mail.
It showed his true, and even in the comics they do that too. It's like, obviously J. Jonah Jameson is like annoying,
rough around the edges.
Yeah, he's annoying. He's all over Peter. He hates Spider-Man, but at the end of the day, like he is a good guy.
He means well.
Yeah, he means well. He's got a good heart at the end of the day, and obviously, like you said too, he's perfection. There's a reason that he's at the end of Spider-Man: Far From Home because. You can't recast that role. Like, no matter what. That guy was perfect for it. Even from, like, the 60s cartoons and the comic books and the 90s animated. Like, it's him. Yeah. They're all one person. Yeah. It's crazy.
Grade out of 10, what would you give this movie?
I would give this about a 9.
Same. 9.
I think
it's near perfection.
Spider-Man 2 obviously is, like, the best Spider-Man movie, and we're going to talk about that.
That's upcoming. 10 out of 10. Perfection.
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 movie. But this movie just falls a little shy under that because like it doesn't live up to the Spider-Man 2. It's a great starting point. It's
to me,
it's
like the Batman 89 versus Batman Returns. Me personally, I love the sequel.
Yes. Yeah,
usually movies aren't like that. The first one's best, and it kind of like weans off. This one is perfect for an origin entry into the trilogy.
It's a good starting point. Yeah.
It's great. It's obviously the second best, but Spider-Man 2, chef's kiss. Masterpiece. We'll talk about it. Perfect soundtrack by Danny Elfman. Every note of this score is like memorable.
The Goblin's music's great. Oh god, the year is 2002. We are in the theaters. The popcorn is in the air. We're just rubbing it all over ourselves, and then you hear the opening credits. And you're just like, let's go. You get so hyped for that. That opening theme to me is up there with like John Williams' Superman, Batman's. You know, like it's a great composer. It's a great opening theme, and I hope that they do bring that music back for a hint in this new multiverse thing. If they're gonna be bringing back Toby and Andrew,
if I see the Marvel credits roll with that, oh my god!
Start off with that music, that'd be amazing. Nickelback is hated across all 7 continents these days. Back then, they put out that video for Hero for this song, for this movie. And if you didn't get uplifted for that or watch the video and just like feel that the Spider Mania at the time, you done goofed.
Anyways, that about wraps up today's episode of Twin Talk. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Comment below to join the discussion. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll see you next time. Peace!
If somebody told you we were an ordinary YouTube channel without a care in the world, somebody lied.
Somebody told the truth.
Who are we? We're Twin Talk.